There you go.
Thank you very much.
Insert cash or select payment type. Please take your receipt.
Yikes. Hot. If you've clicked on this video, then you're probably curious to know the status of the noise of my engine. So I brought it to a trustworthy shop. My family has been going to them for basically since they popped up in 1980. Very trustworthy shop, and they're not like a dealer that's gonna, just yank you for every dollar that you can. So I brought it in. They heard the ticking, they heard the noise, they took it for a drive. They also confirmed that it drives just fine. There's no engine codes. Basically, they popped open the valve covers to take a look to see if there was anything wrong with the rocker arms, the rods, the springs, the top end of the heads. And they didn't find anything wrong there, so they suspect that it's a little bit deeper into the heads, such as the lifters and the cam, which is what I suspect. Without removing the head, they cannot confirm that the noise is in fact coming from the lifters or the cam. They suspect that's where it's at, but this was just a diagnostics, and as it is, this diag also involved them putting a new seal, a new gasket on the valve covers. This whole service came to $420. Given that the noise isn't very bad, it's not very loud, it's not throwing any codes. If this was really bad, then it would probably be throwing a check engine light for misfires. The engine is not doing that. It's just an audible sound, so it's likely on its way out. Oil catch cans. I want to talk about that. This here is an oil catch can. It is made by Billet Tech. They're not a sponsor. I bought this with my own money. What it does is it sits in between the PCV and the intake, and it catches all of the oil blow by that comes out of the crankcase ventilation. Basically, all of that oil that you just saw me dump would have otherwise been going back into the intake. It's gonna end up gumming up your intake valves. It'll gum up the whole intake manifold. Another benefit is if that oil is going back through and getting run through the intake, it's going to reduce your octane value. So if you're putting octane of, say, like, 89, might knock it down a couple points. So something to consider if you're running a 5.7 or any of the Hemis. Okay, so let's get back to talking about the service, the work involved, how expensive this conversation is. They say just continue to drive it. There shouldn't be any issues. Just keep an eye on the sound. If it starts to get louder or if it starts throwing codes, then that's when I should start to act on a fix or the service for the job. In addition to the repair, which would consist of replacing the lifters, replacing the cam, they're going to be going through and doing all different. Let me rephrase. If they were to do the job, they would be replacing all the gaskets. I'd have them do the exhaust manifold bolts. They'd be doing the lifters, cam, and I would likely have them put in the Hellcat oil pump, because that has it's a larger pump itself, so it should increase the oil pressure at times when it needs it most, when the stock pump doesn't provide adequate pressure, and that is at idle. I would have them put the Hellcat oil pump in as well. They would also be performing a cooling system flush and an oil change, just because of the nature of pulling all of this apart. You could have all of these fluids cross-contaminating with each other, and that's something that if I were to do the job, I would be doing that myself as well. What this cost comes down to have the shop do it is a little bit more than I was expecting. They quoted me $5,600. Granted, that's a lot of money. They would have this job done right. The price also includes all OEM parts, so including gaskets, all OEM parts, and anywhere that they would otherwise be cutting corners and using like generic aftermarket but OEM equivalent parts to save a little bit of money on the customer. In that quote, I asked for them to use specifically OEM. After asking them for a quote on all OEM stuff, I had a thought to myself, well, the gaskets are probably fine to use aftermarket stuff, but things like the cam and the lifters, I would want those to be the OEM stuff, because they last 113,000 miles. That's what I have now. Why not just continue to use that? Maybe it'll last another 113,000 miles. As far as the shop making sure that the job is done right, they're going to make sure that it's done right. They have such pride with customer satisfaction and a reputation to uphold, to make sure that it's done right and the customer's happy, that they'll make sure that it's done right. So that's really where a lot of the cost comes in, is if I'm going to be shelling out $5,600 to get this work done, I'm going to know that the job is going to be done and it's going to be done right. If I wanted to do myself, which I feel like I could do, but say I mess something up, then I'm going to have to own it, and I'm going to have to do the work and fix it. Potentially have to replace the entire motor versus just the top end. So lots to consider, but as of right now, you saw that I just went through the oil change. I added a little bit of Marvel Mystery Oil, maybe quieting the lifters down a little bit, help reduce some of the wear. We'll see. I've heard good things about that stuff. As of right now, it seems like the noise is not as present after the engine has been running for a little bit. it is kind of there during cold start after it's been started, and it runs for, well, until it gets close to operating temperature. It seems like everything is all checked out, so that's kind of where we're at right now.